You can access the entire episode now on our website, forbiddenknowledge.news, Rokfin, Rumble, and all podcast platforms. Now, you said you use a Geiger counter, and this can detect when these things are in proximity?
Yeah, very much so. Yeah, they can detect sort of entity type things at ground level. I mean, how I explain it? Yeah, they what happens is when these things come through the sky, even if they're at like 1,000 foot in the air, it seems to detect it. You get a sudden burst. I mean, I set it for there's about normal background radiation which you get, which is about 0.9 microsieverts per hour. But I set mine for 0.20 and higher. And these things, they give a brief, really quick hit on the Geiger counter.
Interesting.
Yeah, and you can catch things at ground level. I've caught entities and things that have been, I think when they manifest into this reality, albeit still invisible, you can actually get some kind of energies formed, which seems to set the Geiger counter off.
So you not only have caught these entities in the sky, you can catch them on the surface level as well?
That's right, yeah. I've captured them in a forested, wooded area at the bottom of my garden. I've got a research area, which is about an acre of land, which is my garden, and it backs onto another area. And I film there. Well, I use the side of the house to record in the ultraviolet. And then I, just with the infrared camera, I just walk around with a Geiger counter and just take random photographs when I get a hit.
Now, what about film? Is there any way to film these like a movie camera? Can you catch these on live action?
Yeah, I have done. Yeah, basically a lot of the things I caught, the fish-like forms and some of the other strange things, which are in my book, Quest of the Invisibles, they're actually taken from moving footage. But very often these things will only appear, even if you're filming at 1 frame per, sort of 50 frames per second, these things will often only appear in 1 frame, maybe 2, maybe 3. They seem to be traveling really, really fast on some kind of etheric flow, which seems to go from west to east, which I discovered. I discovered it during my work, but Dr. Reich also speculated about this flow. He found there's a west to east flow in this part of the world. And they seem to be riding on it or caught up on it. These are the things that I've captured, the fish-like forms in the ultraviolet.
Is it that they're flowing with some sort of invisible plasma force?
It seems to be, yeah. It seems to be a really fast-moving, it's like a force, basically, yeah. It's almost like an invisible river that they're flowing on. And they're only visible just as they hit the sunlight at a certain angle.
Besides the Geiger counter, is there any other types of detection techniques that you would use to notify you that these entities are around?
You can use things like EMF meters that detect fluctuations in the electromagnetic field basically there's a group from Italy that I got into that were active during the late 70s, early 80s, and the GRCU. Now they used a whole range of different detection devices. They used light and heat detectors. They used infrared and ultraviolet detectors. They also used they measured EMF detectors measuring fluctuations in the magnetic field, and Geiger counters. And they mainly did their work at night, but they captured some great footage. Some of that is on my website and also in the paper that I did. If people were interested in this, they can look at I did a 2-part paper, co-wrote it, and that's got the best evidence from Trevor James Constable, from myself, and from the GRCU. We did it in defence of Constable's work. So if you can put the link to that on the show, people can see that for themselves and get an idea of the sort of things that you can capture out there.
Yeah. Well, go ahead.
But it takes a lot of patience. I mean, I sometimes go out there, well, not so much now because I've got a few back problems, but at one point I was out there sort of 5, 6, 7 days a week for anything up to 7 hours. And the thing is, when you're filming at 50 frames a second, that's 3,000 frames a minute. And some of these things only appear on one or 2 frames. And you get a Geiger counter here, but by the time you've recognized it, hundreds of frames have gone by. So you have to roughly know where that was. Then you've got to go back through and through the footage and find it. So, but with the infrared, it's more instantaneous when you're taking a photograph. You get the hit and you take photos in the direction that the Geiger counter is aiming and just hope you capture something. Whether that be really high in the sky or at ground level. You get a feel for it after a while. You also get like a feeling. Some of the entities I photographed, I could sense they were near, and I just got a real sudden feeling of dread. And the exact time, the Geiger counter's gone off.
Have some of these entities, did you get a sense of intelligence, or even have any of them seemed to interact in any way, or that when they are aware of you, have any of them been aware of you in any way?
Oh, definitely, yeah, because I took photos in the Geiger what I did was walk around. What happened was basically my cat Roy died, and I buried my cat. And I went out every night and started taking photographs, long infrared exposures of 15 seconds or more, in total darkness at his gravesite. I was asking if he could give me a sign he was still around. And that's how I caught that snake-like entity that lit the whole grave. And then after that, I noticed that every time I walked past the greenhouse, I'd suddenly get a hit on the Geiger counter. So I decided, as it was so dark, to use an infrared camera with a standard flash on it. So what I did, the moment I walked past the greenhouse, I got the hit on the Geiger counter, and I instantaneously took photographs straight into the greenhouse. And I was using I found that the normal standard flash is enough to light up the greenhouse and light up the area around these entities and show them, make them appear in the infrared. So they were definitely appearing for me, because it was every time I walked past, I'd suddenly get the hit on the Geiger counter, and I'd just instantaneously take photographs, and I captured 4 of them. One looked like an ET, one was a ghostly kind of figure, one looked like it was almost like a cat-like being, really dark. They didn't reflect light, it's really dark, it looked like it had horns, and it had some kind of creature sitting on its knee. And then the other photograph I caught was this really weird-looking head with a really big mouth and big teeth, and really freaky-looking things. And that's where it all started going a bit weird. I started hearing footsteps in my room then, and hearing a voice called, and my sister would hear her name called. And the doorbell started ringing at 3 o'clock in the morning. And we're not out on the main road. We've got like a gated area to come in, so there's nobody going to be walking around our premises at 3 in the morning. Plus the lights didn't trigger around the house. So they were definitely interacting. Showing me they were there. I could feel they were there.
So it's possible that what you're interacting with is not only what people may consider extraterrestrials, but possibly spirit realm entities or interdimensional beings, or something that we would consider more of a metaphysical type entity, right?
Yeah, basically, yeah. They were very ghostly, sort of paranormal type entities, some of them. Mm-hmm. The strange thing is that the first photograph I captured in the greenhouse, it was like a ghost-like entity, which seemed to be holding like a lantern. And when I went out the second time, and it was about a week later, I suddenly got the hit on the Geiger counter just as I approached the greenhouse. In my mind, I said to myself, I don't mind capturing ETs and craft and stuff like that, but I'm not really into ghost hunting. And then lo and behold, the next photograph I took, it was actually like a little ET. About 3 or 4 foot high with a proper ET head. It's almost like I said. So I just think there's some kind of entity that could perhaps shapeshift rather than being solidly in that state of being.
Now, you've also captured things that seem to be solid nuts and bolts type of craft and physical technology even.
Some of the things, there's a picture on the front of my website, which is a whole load of lights, and it seems to be part of some kind of a power system. It's almost like the bars on an electric fire, and they're all different intensity, and they're all different sort of shapes. But that was right above a 100-foot tree. I took 2 photographs when the Geiger counter went off, and basically nothing appeared in the second or third photo. I think it took 3, but this appeared in the first photo. And it was taken in pitch dark. I don't use a flash when I take photos in the dark. And this looked like it was part of a craft, and there's another object just above it. And all you're seeing is the intensity of the energy, which is being picked up in the infrared, which is obviously heat. But I saw nothing at all, and this thing was massive. And I've caught other things that look sort of nuts and boltsy, but it's strange. I'm convinced that a lot of these things are interdimensional. There's an interdimensional slant to these things, to be quite honest with you.
Do you find that certain areas have more density of these entities than others?